So I am live for the first time on YouTube using StreamYard. I've been inspired by all these shows that I've been on. So here I am with my own show. It's got no title, but it's George. It's me talking about boxing. I have no idea if people are going to come in and watch, but I am here and I'm going to talk some boxing in the little bit of time that I'm going to stay on. So I have been a boxing fan my whole life. Hey, I've been a boxing fan my whole life. And Qui's one of the shows. There's a lot of shows here on YouTube that have inspired me to really do this, because the beauty about YouTube is that there is a lot of passion. There's a lot of love out there for boxing, and YouTube lets you show some of that passion. And here I am trying to show some of it. To give you a little introduction to me, I do a weekly show that is on YouTube. And I would like to share the show that I do every week. It's called One Round with George. This is the one,
Here it is.
the only One Round with George. Ever since I was a kid and saw Sugar Ray Leonard fight, I've loved boxing. I was at HBO for 15 years as a feature producer, won a few sports Emmys.
Not bad.
I got to travel the world and tell the great stories of these fighters.
Maybe something of a rooting interest in Alexander among the entire HBO Sports crew here, because Alexander's manager is former HBO Sports producer George Jakovic.
I've managed a fighter. I've worked a fighter's corner, being as close to the action as you can get. My life has revolved around boxing. Last February 12th on DAZN, former middleweight champion Danny Jacobs lost a split decision to John Ryder. I thought Jacobs may have pulled it out, but in Jacobs' last few fights, he's looked uninspired. It doesn't appear that he has that spark, that fire that made him a champion. Saturday, February 19th, it's a grudge match at welterweight. Former 140-pound champ Amir Khan takes on former welterweight champ Kell Brook. In the UK, it's sold out in 10 minutes. It's a big-time grudge match over there. And let's be honest, this is boxing. Anything goes. If one of them looks good in this fight, it could lead to a bigger fight down the road. If you think that's crazy, in 1997, Hector Camacho was 34 years old. He fought a comebacking Sugar Ray Leonard who was 40. Camacho ended up knocking my
Broke
idol
my
out.
heart
He
beating
parlayed
Sugar Ray
that
like
into
that.
a welterweight title fight against Oscar De La Hoya. So you never know in boxing, anything goes. Folks, I've got to hurry up because my daughter is getting ready to vacuum the floor. She's told me that my time is limited. Also on February 19th on DAZN, former 154-pound champ Jaime Munguia faces off with Demetrius Ballard. They're both unbeaten. Munguia is 38-0 with 30 knockouts. One thing to watch here, Munguia almost passed out after the weigh-in, so we'll see if it affects him in the fight. In news outside the ring, last week, middleweight champ Jermall Charlo was arrested. There have been rumors he's in the running for a possible Canelo fight, but when does an arrest stop fighters from getting fights? It didn't stop Sergey Kovalev from getting the Canelo fight a few years ago. Junior middleweight champ Jermell Charlo was supposed to face off with Brian Castano. It's a rematch of their fight last summer. It was going to decide supremacy at 154 pounds. Castano got hurt and the fight is postponed. I've been talking about April 30th. That's the date that Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano face off in Madison Square Garden for Taylor's lightweight belts. As a fight fan, that date just got better. This week it was made official. Oscar Valdez and Shakur Stevenson have a unification fight at 130 pounds. And I'm backing Shakur all the way. I'm from Jersey. He's from Jersey. I think Shakur Stevenson is going to put on a show. And speaking of that Taylor-Serrano fight in MSG, I got my tickets. I can't wait to be there. And I'd love to celebrate this rich history of boxing. February 15th, it was 44 years since Muhammad Ali and Leon Spinks had their first fight, which was one of the biggest upsets in sports history. Spinks only had 7 professional fights going into that night, but Spinks out-hustled and out-fought Ali over 15 rounds to become the new heavyweight champion of the world. For Spinks, that was the high point of his career. Ali came back a few months later to win their rematch to become the first 3-time heavyweight champion. Spinks was never able to recapture that glory in the ring, and he passed away a year ago. But that one night in 1978, he shocked the world and became a champ. February 19th marked 22 years since Eric Morales and Marco Antonio Barrera had their first fight on HBO. Was on Boxing After Dark. It was one of the best fights of the year. It was back and forth action all 12 rounds. Morales ended up winning a split decision, but what that began was one of boxing's best trilogies ever. Barrera ended up winning the second and the third fights, but it was the boxing fans who won thanks to these great fighters and the great trilogy that they put on.
One last big left hook, and it might have been enough.
the final bell. One round with George is over. That exhilarating one round with me is over. Now you can go to my YouTube page. You can like the content, you can subscribe to the page, and there is more coming soon. So that's a little intro to the weekly show that I do. And Stormy B. See, it's Stormy B and Kwee. These shows, I love the passion that is on YouTube with the boxing show. So anyway, that's my show. I do it every week. It's not really a recap of the fights. It's a recap of some fights and talk about some fights that are coming up. A look back at some historic moments. But it's really 3 minutes that I take to talk about things that are relevant to me in boxing. And one thing that I do, I like to look on the history of this sport. And there is a very significant date coming up. Tomorrow is February 25th. February 25th, 1964 is when a fighter that I'm sure a few people have heard of, Cassius Clay, fought against Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship of the world. And it's funny, today, you know, most fights are on Saturdays. There's the occasional Sunday fight. Tank Davis fought on a Sunday not long ago. This was a Tuesday night, February 25th, 58 years ago. This is when the legend of Cassius Clay was born. Cassius Clay was 22. Sonny Liston, they weren't really sure of his age. He was in his mid-30s, supposedly. Sonny made $1.3 million for the fight. Cassius Clay made $315,000. And that day is the day that the legend of Cassius Clay was born. Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali the next day. And it was 58 years ago. And the beauty about YouTube is that you can watch the fight on YouTube. It is and it's in black and white. Anyone that hasn't seen it, I recommend you go see it. Cassius Clay was a huge underdog, and people don't. It's funny. He wasn't on the level of Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. But if you go back and look at any docs that were done, Cassius Clay was a huge underdog. Everyone thought Sonny Liston was going to knock him out in a few rounds, and that did not happen. Stormy B, check out me and Scrapbook out tonight on Liston versus. See, exactly. So you guys know what's coming. I mean, 58 years ago, it was a great moment. It's something I didn't experience because I'm not old enough. I wasn't born then, but I have talked to people who were around then and people that knew Muhammad Ali. And it's incredible to talk to people who have been through the history, not just read about it, because that's a fight that I just read about. And I've seen, obviously, documentaries and read books, but there's nothing quite like being there. So Cassius Clay became the heavyweight champion of the world that night. And because this is my show, that's not what I want to do. What I wanted to do was go back after the seventh round. After the seventh round, of course, I can't find it. All right, so here we go. So after round six, there's so much drama in this fight. You know, Cassius Clay came out and was just dominating Sonny Liston early. There's a whole thing about liniment being on Sonny Liston's gloves. And of course, I can't find what I'm looking for. But people should, it's definitely a fight worth watching. It was an incredible moment in boxing history. And tomorrow is 58 years since Sonny Liston and Cassius Clay fought. And I think people have heard about me. I was at HBO for 15 years. And there was a man that a lot of us knew there by the name of Artie Curry. Artie Curry his official title was director of talent relations. Artie Curry was just one of the nicest guys I had ever met. He was the liaison between the fighters at HBO and the HBO executives. And Artie was just a good guy. He passed away April 8th, 2009. It'll be 13 years this year. And he was only 49 years old. Everyone had great things to say about Artie. He was I was a PA at HBO when Artie was there, and Artie was his door was always open. And what's funny, what made me think about Artie, I was looking at an old magazine that I have, an old boxing magazine, and A. Curry, it was one of Artie's magazines that he would just give away. He knew I was a huge boxing fan, and his office was always open. I mean, sometimes he would have Iran Barkley in the office. He would whenever a boxer was in town and was in his office, he would always come to me and have me come in and meet these guys. And I remember being in Artie's office, and he called up Larry Holmes and Joe Frazier and was just having a conversation with two legends. So Artie Curry was just a great guy, and he was gone too soon. And he was a friend to a lot of people, a lot of fighters, and it was a big loss. It was definitely, it was a big loss to boxing. It was a big loss to HBO, and Artie was my friend. He was a good man. And what I want to do is, after he passed, HBO took a moment, and boxing took a moment of silence for him.
Ladies and gentlemen,
and this is what it was
your
on
attention,
HBO.
please. Your attention, please, at this time. Just a few days ago, a great friend of boxing and a member of the HBO sports family passed away. He was with HBO for 20 years, and as a special liaison to the fighter, he was a unique individual. From the athletes and the four-rounders to the superstar champions who appeared on HBO, they all knew they had a friend at the network. He will always be remembered for his big smile, his big heart, his humility and his honesty, and always be remembered for a great three-point shot on the basketball court. He was just one of the guys, but more than that, to those who knew him, he was one of the very best guys. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, please remain silent.
This was 2009.
As we toll a memorial count of 10 for our fallen friend and comrade, Arthur Curry. Peace and love to you, my brother.
For more than 20 years, that chair immediately behind me at ringside was Artie Curry's. More on him at the end of the telecast. So now indulge us for a minute. Arthur Curry died earlier this week. He worked for HBO. You haven't heard of him before. If Artie Curry had been an announcer, just an announcer, or just a producer or a director or an executive who buys the fights, it would be pretty easy for us to tell you what he did. But there's a lot more to it than that. Larry?
Yeah, Jim, a good man died young. And throughout the HBO world, beyond sports, from the mailroom, where he started 30 years ago after a real bad start, a tragic start in his life, and became a beloved figure throughout the building. virtually every cubicle and office. A role was created for him to be a liaison, a kind of diplomat between the suits and the fighters. And sometimes it was between the fighters and the tuxes. And the important thing was he did it with such grace, with such a pure spirit, that you just wanted to be around him. He said that it's just being real. And the reality is that we're all somewhere between tears and devastation because a good man died young.
Indeed. So again, you're indulging us here. Emmanuel, your final words on Arthur Curry?
Well, I think it'd be summed up as soon as he died, there's about a half an hour, I got a call from Ronnie Shields, the trainer in Houston, and he was in tears. And I get a call in about another 10 minutes from a guy named Larry Merchant. He's nearly in tears. The fact that this has been bridged between boxers and the trainers and the HBO staff, the executives of HBO, and everybody loved him. He was our connection, and we lost a very good person.
Yep, that's the best way to sum it up. To fighters, trainers, and other denizens of this sport all over the world, Arthur Curry was HBO. Good night, Arthur. Good night, all of you.
And that was Artie Curry. Artie Curry was loved by a lot of people, had this big booming voice, and was just a good man. And it's going to be 13 years since he passed away, April 8th, 2009. So Artie is remembered. He was loved by a lot of people. And I like to definitely give respect to people who helped me, because he helped me when I was at HBO. He helped a lot of people. He was a good man, loved to have fun, and he loved boxing. So one of the beauties of this show is that you can talk to people. And I see people that are actually taking time to watch. And the Iceman said the Mafia had that fight fixed, though. You know, Sonny Liston was a part of the Mafia. Or the Mafia had a part of Sonny Liston. I don't think there's any doubt to that. The second fight, maybe something crazy was going on, but that first fight, Cassius Clay dominated that fight. And there was a point where Sonny Liston had liniment on his gloves, cheated to try to blind Cassius Clay, and Clay was blind for an entire round. And if you watch that, it looked like Sonny Liston was trying to take him apart. He wasn't pulling his punches. He was throwing as hard as he could with every ounce of his 218 pounds that night. And Cassius Clay, his eyes cleared. In the sixth round, he went to beating down Sonny Liston some more. And then Sonny Liston sat on the stool, and that was it. So could the fight have been fixed? We'll see. Bruce Goes is on here. So I need to give shout outs to people that are on here. It's much appreciated. And Stormy B, I will check out the fight with you in the show with you in Scrapbook tonight, because I'm sure between today and tomorrow, there's going to be a lot of remembrances for the Cassius Clay Sonny Liston fight. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. Not too long ago, I had the chance to talk to Randy Gordon. Randy Gordon is the former commissioner of boxing in New York. He is a former commentator, former editor of Ring Magazine. He's got a serious XM boxing show with Jerry Cooney. And he is a guy who was friends with Muhammad Ali. So we talked not just a few days ago about this date coming up tomorrow. And he was 15 years old, and he said he listened to the radio back then. He didn't go to the closed circuit because he was in high school. His parents wouldn't let him go. So he listened to it on the radio, which I've never heard a radio telecast of a fight. It's something I wish I could hear. So February 25th, tomorrow, 58 years since the legend of Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali was started. And not to be a downer or anything, but next month it's going to be a year since one of my favorite fighters, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, passed away. He passed away at the age of 66. At first, some people were saying it was COVID related. Then it wasn't. I don't think there's a. I don't think I've seen the actual cause of his death, but it was shocking because I grew up watching him, and if you've ever seen Marvelous Marvin Hagler, he looked like he was chiseled out of steel. You know, he looked like Superman. And guys like that, you don't think can ever die. But sadly, he did. Sadly, he did. It's coming up on a year ago. And what I would like to do here is on my YouTube page, I do a couple of shows. One is my One Round with George, and another is a scrapbook show, which Scrapbook Boxing should like. When I grew up, I literally made scrapbooks of all the fights that I would see, and even the ones I didn't see. Boxing used to be on Saturdays and Sundays in the afternoon, usually not at night, except for the HBO fights. But it was a great time to grow up. So I have a scrapbook show that I did. I picked certain fights, and one of the last one I did a few months ago was Marvelous Marvin Hagler's fight with Tony Sibson. With Tony Sibson at the time was the #1 contender, and I would just like to play.
And there's a booming left hand behind a right hand by Marvin Hagler. Hagler's fighting a perfect fight. And that's all. That is all. Vastly. He'll change.
What I want to do and have Marvin.
Light of the 14,000 people in the center in Worcester.
Cut down.
Don't throw any punches during the break, okay? Seconds come out fighting. Seconds come out fighting.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Marvin Hagler, of course, does not shake hands before a fight. It is not any kind of a hostility. It is just merely the way he does business.
You will see a great deal of boxing skill from Marvin up until he's able to hurt Simpson. And then he'll get very mean and start taking advantage of it.
And Hagler started to take advantage of Simpson early. Hagler came out sharp, firing off beautiful, accurate combinations. This was going to be a long night for Tony Sibson.
There was an uppercut lead. That hurt Simpson. Hagler with 3 punches that all scored right on the face of Tony Simpson.
Once again, Hagler's back to orthodox. And all of a sudden he'll change.
By the way, that's Sugar Ray Leonard doing commentating on HBO with Barry Tompkins and Larry Merchant. And notice how smoothly Hagler could go from southpaw to righty. He just switched there. He did this often in a fight. It allowed him to get off his combinations from different angles. And on this night, Tony Sibson could not deal with the Marvelous Marvin Hagler that was in front of him.
A little bit of blood from the nose of Tony Sibson. What a jab. Brilliant jab by Marvin Hagler.
We're really seeing the versatility of Marvin Hagler here. His ability to box is vastly underrated.
To me, Ray, just seems to be getting better with every fight.
After 5 rounds of domination, Hagler came out for round 6 intent on ending the fight.
Close before too long. Marvin Hagler goes right for it. What a boxing exhibition you're seeing for the champion tonight. There is a cut along, seems to be right at the bridge of the nose, and combinations of punches by Hagler. Simpson fights back. Hagler tags him with a right, and another right behind an uppercut. Hagler right back on his man now, sensing that he has him hurt. And down goes Tony Simpson. Hagler trying to finish it off right here. A jolting right hand, a looping right hand by Hagler. And another. Simpson stands toe-to-toe. He's down, and this should be it. Padilla sends him to the neutral corner. Simpson is on his feet. And that's all. That is all. To say that Marvin Hagler was impressive would be to make a great understatement.
It would be an understatement. He showed so much that I'm quite sure the opponents that are looking at him now are a bit intimidated.
After this fight, Tony Sibson went on to fight another 5 years. He never was able to win a title. He had 2 more shots. He fought for a light heavyweight belt against Dennis Andres, and he lost. And in the final fight of his career, he fought against Frank Tate, who was a 1984 Olympian, for the middleweight title. He lost that fight. He called it a career. And for Marvin Hagler, I mean, he went on to some huge fights. He beat Duran that same year. He went on to fight Thomas Hearns in maybe his most famous fight, who he knocked out in 3 rounds in 1985. And then the final fight of his career against Sugar Ray Leonard in 1987. Who won that fight? Sugar Ray Leonard got the decision. Hagler retired and is one of the few fighters who retired and stayed retired. Sadly, in 2021, Marvin Hagler passed away, which shocked anyone who saw him fight. And I was a kid when I watched him fight. He was so strong. He looked like he was chiseled out of granite. And guys like that, they're almost like superheroes. And you think they can never be hurt. It's very sad that Hagler is gone, but he left his mark on the sport. He was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he will be remembered forever as a great fighter. Man, what a cool, I mean, HBO, Marvin Hagler fighting, destroying Tony Simpson. It was a great night. Now tell me, what did you learn from all this talk about Marvelous Marvin Hagler? Wait, actually, give me this, because I like to take this.
That's my 13-year-old daughter, who I do the show with.
He had over 60 fights, which, that's like huge now, right? He was born in New Jersey, which is pretty cool. That's what I'm into.
Do you remember what his nickname was?
Marvelous. Well, no, that was his name, actually. Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Look at you! You knew that was his actual name.
He changed his name to Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
And that's the perfect way I'm going to remember him, as being simply marvelous. So that is another show I do on YouTube. It's called George's Boxing Scrapbook Stories and Scrapbook and Stormy B. I think you'll like that show too. And literally it is, I've got about 5 or 6 of these scrapbooks. A lot of them, they're just, they're not together anymore. But this first one, this was Larry Holmes and Ronaldo Snipes from 1981. So I do a show and I look back at fights that I remember fondly. And the last one I did was Marvelous Marvin Hagler and his fight with Tony Simpson, Stormy B. I know Hagler had, look, most people remember him for that fight with Tommy Hearns, and rightly so, and the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. But Marvin Hagler could do everything in that ring, everything. And Tony Simpson was a tough #1 contender, rugged guy, and Marvin Hagler took him apart, just like he took apart almost everyone he fought. So that is another show that I have on YouTube. I'm just like everyone else on YouTube. I love the sport, and it's a sport that doesn't really love us, but I love it. I was lucky enough to be at HBO for 15 years, and I'm still a producer. I'm still, in fact, the last fighters camp I was in Danny Garcia's camp before he fought Errol Spence. I was a field producer, so I was in his camp for about 3 weeks. So I got to hang out with him and Angel Garcia, who was a character. If you know who Angel is Danny's father and trainer, and he's one of the characters in the sport. But I love the sport, and I love to talk about it, and YouTube gives us the opportunity to talk about it. There's a lot of talent in a lot of these shows, and I respect the people who take the time to put together a show and think about a show and execute a show. Just to have this outlet to talk about boxing is a great thing. And this is something that I want to do more often. And this is my first time doing this on StreamYard, first time doing this, period. Like I said, I love to talk about fights coming up. I love to talk about fights from the past because I do respect the sport and I love the sport. And that's it. That's my show. And Arthur Curry, again, he's someone that, if you don't know who he is, just Google his name, Arthur Curry, and you'll find out a little bit about him, a little bit about what he meant to HBO, what he meant to boxing. He was a great guy, and he's definitely missed. So this is the show that has no title. It's got no name. It's just me. Since I seem to title on my shows George blank blank, it's George Unboxing. And Bruce Goes, and I have started a show on his channel. We have brought back Tuesday Night Fights. And if Tuesday Night Fights is copyrighted, we can call it Tuesday Fight Nights. We can switch it around, Bruce. We can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want with that. So Bruce has started that, and he brings me along for the ride every Tuesday night. We throw some fights up, talk about them, and for those that don't remember, Tuesday Night Fights was on USA Today. Stormy B, listen, I'd love the opportunity to be on any of your shows. Any of your shows. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on a show with someone like you. Link the video. Yeah, Remy, that's a good idea. I should link the video. But Stormy, I definitely want to be on your show. Honestly, what show, it doesn't matter. It would be an honor to talk boxing with you. Of course, I can't find a link, but so the two shows I do on YouTube, One Round with George, I take 3 minutes and talk some boxing, and George's Boxing Scrapbook Stories. The next one I'm doing is a fighter some of you may have heard of, Hector Macho Camacho. It will be the fight where he became a champion for the first time at 130 pounds when he took on Bazooka Lamone. It was back in the 80s. And Sugar Ray Leonard was in the midst of one of his retirements. Hector Camacho was supposed to be the guy to really take over, and he had all the skills to do it. That night, he looked spectacular against Bazooka Lamone, and that's going to be the next show. But that's it. I'm going to end this broadcast. There's no music going in. There's no music going out. It's just me talking boxing. And I appreciate people taking some time out to hear what I have to say. And hopefully I'll be back soon.